All right, we got the third edition of New Home, Same Production, question mark, where it's a little series that we've done. This is the last one where we look at players who have a new home this offseason, either through free agency or trades.
Correct.
And we're trying to determine, is their production going to be better or worse, you know, here in 2022 and beyond. We got 4 players: Hollywood Brown, A.J. Brown, Noah Fant, and then Amari Cooper that we're going to talk about. So I think it's good content. Let's get to it. Hollywood Brown, I'll start off with your boy Hollywood. Last year, 91 receptions on 146 targets, over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, finished as the wide receiver 22.
Correct.
So now we go from playing with Lamar Jackson in the Ravens offense to playing with Kyler Murray in Arizona. I think he has a great chance to finish as a top 20 wide receiver. I'm going to give you my exact prediction here in a second, but I'm trying to be as realistic as possible. My prediction, I think he can finish higher personally. I think his upside is higher, but I'm giving you a safe floor as to what I believe he can do here in Arizona. Let's talk about it. How can he get back to that kind of finish? A top 20 guy. He finished wide receiver 22 last year. How can he get back to that? Well, he had 146 targets last year in Baltimore. That is a lot of targets, right? And the question is, can he hit that kind of number in Arizona? Well, let's just talk about that for a second, okay? We do this quite often on the channel, okay? Because the most important thing for Hollywood is who's throwing him the ball.
Exactly.
So let's look at Kyler Murray versus Lamar Jackson last year. Pass attempts per game, Kyler had more. Pass yards per game, Kyler had more. Yards per attempt, Kyler had more. Touchdowns per game, Kyler had more. So, in my opinion, I think it's pretty easy to say that Kyler Murray is better for your fantasy wide receiver. He is the better quarterback for your wide receiver to be connected to. Plus, we have to keep in mind, DeAndre Hopkins will be out for at least 8 games. This might sound crazy, but for those, 6 games. For those 6 games, is it unrealistic to say that Hollywood could be seeing 8 to 10 targets in those games? Right? I don't think it's unrealistic. I think it's a very realistic possibility. I want to be very realistic with this take. So keeping in mind that D-Hop is out 6 games, obviously Hollywood will be the number 1 target. They just sent a first-round pick for him, a foundational pick. I think a realistic, target share per game would be 7.5 targets. 7.5. I think that's a very realistic number for Hollywood to get in this offense with the competition around him. Now, that would be less targets on the year at 128, okay? So he had 146 last year. That would be 128 this year. That might be less targets, but I think there will be more efficiency and more yards as well as more touchdowns, okay? So I think we're going to see a more efficient Hollywood. Look at how efficient Christian Kirk was last year. I think that's what we're going to probably see with Hollywood, just an upgraded version of that. I've talked about it before, but I think the college connection is absolutely crucial here for this Kyler and Hollywood connection. In Kyler's Heisman year, Hollywood was his go-to guy when he put up over 50 touchdowns on that year. He had CeeDee Lamb and Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown had a great last year with Kyler, putting up over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. That's a connection that they absolutely can translate to the NFL. And like I said, Hollywood Brown will be what Christian Kirk could never be in this offense. He will be that versatile weapon that is the go-to. And I'm not so certain personally that when D-Hop comes back, that it still won't be Hollywood as the number 1 target. I don't think, at least the conversations that I've heard, is that, well, when D-Hop gets back, it's going to be bad. I personally don't feel that way. We're talking about D-Hop, who didn't really look like the same D-Hop last year already over the age of 30 by the time the season begins. So that hill is approaching quicker than we realize. I think Hollywood was a smart move because they're trying to get a younger guy in there to kind of build around Kyler.
Right.
And by the way, despite all the Kyler hate, I said this last time we talked about Hollywood, but despite all the Kyler hate, because there's a lot of hate out there, he just had his career best in season wins, completion percentage, yards per game, touchdown percentage, and interception rate. Okay?
Right.
So all these things being put together, I do think we can see Hollywood Brown improve this year based off of what he did last year. Last year, he finished as a wide receiver 22. Okay? This year, I'm predicting him to be the wide receiver 19. Okay. Wide receiver 19. That's a very valuable wide receiver 2 on your team or a flex option if you're really deep at the position. I'm saying 85 receptions, over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. Wide receiver 19 finish. I think it's a realistic. I think I brought a realistic take here, considering everything that was involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's completely realistic. You know, my concern is, even though you did speak about it, was the D-Hop return. You know, I think they will want to feed DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe he gets the targets and Hollywood gets the touchdowns. Maybe this is flip like that. We don't know. That's how I'm feeling. But I am comfortable with wide receiver 19, no doubt about it. People are putting him top 10. You know, he's gonna break out. He's gonna go crazy. I'm like, bro, I don't know
the hard thing about that. Well, I think his upside. I really do think his upside is top 15. I'll say that.
Yeah, okay.
I think Hollywood's upside is top 15. I'm not gonna sit here and say he's top 12. I'm also not gonna say it's outside the realm of possibilities. But I think his more realistic upside is top 15.
Right.
I wanted to bring a super realistic take today. But by the way, on the D-Hop thing, D-Hop has never been like shoved targets down his throat in Arizona. It's not been that way since he's come to Arizona. It was that way in Houston, but it's not been that. I mean, even this year, the 10 games that he played, he was averaging 6.4 targets per game.
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
And that was with, I would say, Hollywood is a way better upgrade over the players that, you know, whoever, Christian Kirk pretty much is who we're talking about as number 2 last year. So I think the whole conversation around D-Hop ruining everything, I think it's going to impact it, but not to the point where I'm devastated.
Right. All right. Our second guy that we want to talk about here is AJ Brown, AJB. He's got traded to the Philadelphia Eagles this past season. 63 receptions this past year, 869 yards, 5 touchdowns. He finished wide receiver 32. Keep in mind, he did miss 4 games. Yeah. And I think the biggest question, for everyone in the fantasy community, even when he got traded, the first question is, where do you value A.J. Brown? And I do not believe you should immediately drop him, you know, to outside your wide receiver 1 tier. I do believe he's still a solid wide receiver 1. The big question is, can Jalen Hurts produce a top wide receiver? Can Jalen Hurts be more efficient? Can Jalen Hurts just be better as a quarterback as a whole? And for me, as a Jalen Hurts believer and believer in this Eagles offense, believer, as much as I hate to say it because I'm a Giants fan, and believer in everything that's happening over there, I do believe Jalen Hurts can produce a top at least 2 top 25 wide receivers in Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. You know, we haven't seen that yet. The highest wide receiver finish Jalen Hurts has had was a wide receiver 30 with Devonta Smith this past year. But I do believe he could project A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith into the top 25. To be fair, let's really look at A.J. Brown. He really hasn't finished in the top 10 in his career at all. And that was with Ryan Tannehill.
Well, he did. He did in 2020, I believe, last year.
2020,
he finishes as a top. I finished as wide receiver 12, but in points per game, he was actually wide receiver 4 in 2020.
Right. I guess like in the fantasy total, like in the top 10, just in the fantasy finishes.
Okay.
He didn't finish, but I do agree in points and everything you were saying. I completely agree. He hasn't surpassed that. Funny enough, I actually believe he could surpass that here with Jalen Hurts. He can actually be every single year. We've always said A.J. Brown could be a top 5 wide receiver. A.J. Brown could be that guy. He can always come in and project. Can he stay healthy? That's the question. He's always missed, he's always had nicks and knacks. He's always missed 3 to 4 games every single year. If he stays healthy, if he does do this thing, if he does transition to be this guy in Philly, I believe that can happen, especially with Jalen Hurts, okay? In the past 3 years, A.J. Brown was only averaging 93 targets per season. There's obviously, once again, that was probably affected by that.
Yeah, he wasn't healthy most of those games.
By those injuries.
Well, most of those seasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt about it. He can go to the 115, 130 targets in the season if he does stay healthy. I still do believe A.J. Brown should be in the conversation of being a top at least 5 wide receiver. He should be in the conversation of being, hey, do you think A.J. Brown can finish as a top 5 wide receiver? And I would say yes. Like with confidence. I know everyone is questioning Jalen Hurts, but I still believe he could be that guy. Realistically, though, I think he could finish as a top 10 wide receiver still with Jalen Hurts, and this is where I believe he's going to finish. I put him in the wide receiver 7 to 11 window with my predictions. So 104 receptions, just over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 8 to 9 touchdowns. That feels really comfortable for me. don't knock AJ Brown now because now he's just with the Eagles. Okay.
Yeah.
Now because he's with Jalen Hurts. Still believe in him. And that's one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a run first offense. Who ran the ball the most this past year? The Eagles did. So, hey, I think it fits well. I think it fits well, but I'm not saying that's what's going to happen this year. But I do believe that
I can't remember what video it was, but I broke it down where I looked at Ryan Tannehill's efficiency and Jalen Hurts' efficiency. That's what really worries me. Mm-hmm. I would agree with the sentiment that he can get more receptions in this offense because if he's going to be successful with Jalen Hurts, it has to be manufactured touches, right?
Yeah.
Think about how many times he won over the top in Tennessee. That's because Ryan Tannehill is a average to above average deep ball thrower. Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts is not that at this point of his career. So I can think of so many times in my head right now how many corner routes, corner fades, we're seeing a 30-yard touchdown to A.J. Brown. I don't think those types of plays are going to be happening very often in Philly.
Right.
However, I do think we're going to see a lot of manufactured touches, almost the a la Deebo Samuel role a little bit.
Okay.
Here in Philadelphia. So I do think top 12 is realistic. I think that's how it's going to happen. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I agree.
They can't have Jalen Hurts be, throwing these deep balls to him because he's not a good deep ball thrower. So, we'll see.
I guess just to finish, he'll probably be less efficient, more targets. Maybe he probably gets more opportunity in a touchdown range then, because if he can't get the targets, maybe this Eagles team can get down to the red zone and then just rely on.
You think
AJ
about
Brown.
it. In Tennessee, you have Derrick Henry.
He just punched.
So he's going to get a lot of the goal line touches. He's going to get a lot of the inside the 10-yard line work. Mm-hmm. Now, I do think Miles Sanders would be more involved, Jalen Hurts, but you could use A.J. Brown in that role. So
absolutely,
we'll see. I think there's a possibility that he has a lot of receptions and not a lot of yards because of the amount of manufactured touches we could see.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, all right, the next player we're going to talk about is Noah Fant.
Interesting.
It's no secret. It's no secret here that he's been a huge disappointment in almost everyone's eyes in Dynasty and fantasy football in general. But the tight end position is so bad that Noah Fant was a top 12 wide receiver top 12 tight end last year. Okay. That's how bad the tight end position is. In 2021, 68 receptions on 90 targets, just under 700 yards and 4 touchdowns. That was good enough for the tight end 12. So tell me how unfortunate this is for Noah Fant.
Right.
We go from Denver, where we had terrible quarterback play and too many weapons to compete with, now to Seattle with terrible quarterback play and too many weapons to compete with. Like, this is the worst case. Actually, it's not worst case scenario. It's just a complete lateral move. It really is. Like, this is a complete lateral move to Seattle. Mm-hmm. I talked about the bad quarterback play. He still has Drew Lock as his quarterback.
It sucks.
So at least there's a relationship there, but it's not as if it's been, absolute fireworks for fantasy football. Maybe Geno Smith is the quarterback. I don't know if that's a downgrade. I don't know. Secondly, the weapons around him, like we talked about. In Denver, he was the third, fourth option. In Seattle, I think he's probably the third option solidified. So that's good. I mean, he probably solidifies himself as a third option. Whereas in Denver, he was more like third, fourth. It just depended on the game.
Right.
And then you look at the team identities, right? The Broncos run attempts per game last year, they were 14th. The Seahawks last year were 26th. And you know that Pete Carroll hates that they were 26th in the NFL. Mm-hmm. We saw what this team did later down the stretch. But if you look at the 2018 and 2019 seasons in Seattle, they were top 3 in rush attempts per game in both of those seasons. I think this is what Pete Carroll wants to get back to. He wants to show that I can win games with an average quarterback because of what we do in the run game, because of the defense, which is hopefully going to improve. So, and it makes a lot of sense as to why they would have drafted Ken Walker, right? It's going to be hard for me to start calling him Ken Walker. That's what he wants to be called.
Is that what he said?
Apparently it's official. Like, he wants to be Ken Walker.
Call me Ken.
Yeah. Interesting. It is what it is, but it makes sense as to why they would have drafted Walker there.
Yeah.
So I think this team wants to be a more run heavy team. I think they're going to have to be that kind of team because of the quarterback play as well. Mm-hmm. So really, I think your expectations should be the exact same as what we saw last year. Someone who could definitely finish top 12. have a similar target share, similar amount of yards. It's not exciting. It's not a guy that you can start reliably. He's going to be streaky. He's going to be some weeks finishing as a top 5 guy. Other weeks he will have 2 points.
I agree.
This is what I'm expecting for Noah Fant here in Seattle. But I would say there is more hope for me with him being in Seattle than there was in Denver, pre-Russell Wilson trade.
Correct.
And the reason being is because it is a change of scenery. It's a change of coaching staff. He's still a first-round pick, so I feel a little bit more hopeful that there's at least a chance he can finish as a top 10 guy here in Seattle. I think there's a chance, but I think we're seeing a lot of more consistencies here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And let's not forget, this team could be in a top prime pick to get a quarterback next year. So maybe not this year, maybe next year he can fully be the guy that we all believe he could be. This top 8 tight end in the position if they do get a quarterback in the 2023 class. Our last guy on this list is Amari Cooper, and obviously he got traded to the Browns for pennies, for nothing, essentially.
Yeah.
68 receptions, 855 yards, 8 touchdowns, wide receiver 27. He did miss 2 games, and that was with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. Biggest question, new home, is it going to be the same production? Is Deshaun Watson going to play? Is he going to play the whole season? Is he going to miss 8 games? Is he going to miss 4 games? How many games is he going to miss? So I kind of broke it down into worst case scenario and best case scenario based around Deshaun Watson is going to get suspended. Okay.
By the way, did you see the HBO series?
No.
I haven't seen it yet, but I heard about it. Apparently two of the 22 women made a interview on HBO about it.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. That's
not okay. We'll see what happens.
So worst case scenario, in my opinion, because I do believe he will play this season.
Okay. I think so too.
So worst case scenario is 8 games. Okay. And this is projecting Amari Cooper and where he could finish in 8 games. That gives, Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper, just a really only 9 games to kind of mesh with each other and build a chemistry. And within those 8 games, it's either going to be Baker or Jacoby Brissett. We don't know what's going to happen with Baker at the moment, but who knows, okay? So my predictions for that window, for that 8-game suspension without Deshaun Watson, is a wide receiver 21 and 25. Because I do believe with those 9 games, Deshaun Watson still can make this guy fantasy relevant.
Sure.
Can still project him into the top 25. So that's 74 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns, okay? He'll probably get a lot of targets. That I'm thinking of like an Amon-Ra St. Brown finish, okay? You know how Amon-Ra had that run in that second half of the season where nothing was really happening, and then he finished. He was like a top 10 wide receiver every single week. That's how I predict that for Amari Cooper if Deshaun Watson misses 8 games. Best case scenario, even with Deshaun Watson getting suspended, will be a 4-game suspension, okay? Once again, Amari Cooper is going to be playing with Baker or Jacoby Brissett. We don't know. That gives Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper 13 games to do something special where there's no doubt. I believe he can definitely be in a top 12 finish. I don't know how you feel about that. So
I think it's possible.
Yeah, once again, projecting what that would be, a top 12 finish, 76 receptions, over 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That feels really comfortable for me. It's kind of hard to predict and project where Amari Cooper can go. I think he will get the same or too close, the same production that he had in Dallas, because he's not really competing with anyone besides Donovan People-Jones and now David Njoku with that 4-year contract extension. Doesn't feel, and David Bell, it doesn't feel like anyone else is there. So I think this feels comfortable for me. So once again, worst case scenario with 8-game suspension, top 25 finish. Best case scenario with a 4-game suspension is a top 12 finish for Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and I think, if you're sitting out there and you're watching this and you're like, oh, that's so dumb. Like, Amari Cooper will not finish as a top 12 guy. Tell me how Will Fuller finished as a top 12 guy with being the number 1 option for Deshaun Watson.
With injuries and everything. He was nicked up all the time.
So I think it's definitely realistic for sure. I mean, if we can all agree that Amari Cooper is a better wide receiver than Will Fuller, then I think it's possible. So right, guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about this.
Yo, what's good? Thanks
up?
for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch
now,
it.
You can also subscribe
Right now.
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLandFam.